When I think about Khorshed and I think about her life, because this is what the book is about, right? It's the stories from her life. The title, Fortunate to Love Him, is really something that she felt, and that she was very fortunate to have met him and to love him and to have served him her whole life. And to Khorshed, no sacrifice was too great. She would give everything, anything for him. And that is really the spirit. If I thought about one theme, what was the one theme about Khorshed's life, that would be it. No sacrifice was too great to give him, and she gave everything. All the wealth that her family had, all the possessions, everything in love and service to him. How many of you have met Khorshed, had the chance to meet her? Oh, lots of you. And spend time with her too? So maybe when I do these talks, I like to start out by kind of talking about who Khorshed was. And it doesn't sound like I need to do that here, but let me do it anyway. Khorshed was a very close disciple of Meher Baba. She met Meher Baba when she was 12. And she was, when Baba made his first trip to Persia in 1923, 24, she went along. She was the only girl there. Khorshed was the one who would come up with these really creative ideas about how to love Baba. She would be the one who had the ideas. She was the one who, when she combed Baba's hair and found a lice in Baba's hair, she saved that lice for years. Khorshed's the one where when Baba sat on a chair and there was a piece of dust, Khorshed would go and save it, and save that piece of dust in a little matchbox for years because he had touched these things. Khorshed was the one who, when he asked her to not be part of the ashram after the new life, when she was not allowed to be part of the ashram for the new life, as much as it broke her heart, she did that and stayed with him. And this is the woman who all she wanted was to be with him. Her best friend Mara was there, and yet she couldn't be with him. And it broke her heart. Some of you may know Rustam Falahati. Do you guys know Rustam? He's the one who wrote the Real Treasure series. So Rustam worked in the trust office, and he would see Bao on a regular basis, and he asked Bao one day, he said, Baoji, each of the mandali has a quality in which they're unmatched. You know, they are the incarnate of this quality. They just have this quality to such a great extent. Who among the mandali could take suffering that without complaint? Baoji, without batting an eyelash, said Khorshed. And for those of you who know Baoji, this is a man who suffered, right? And Rustam thought, okay, well, that was very interesting. And so but Rustam had a way of asking the question a couple of times. And so the next week he asked the same question another way, who among the mandali could take suffering that Baba gave out? Again, Baoji said the same thing. He said, Khorshed alone could do it. So this is the disciple. This is the person. This is the soul we're talking about here. This is the soul who this book is about. That person who loved Baba, no sacrifice was too great, and she would do it. Some people have asked me how the book was written, and And the fact is, it wasn't exactly written. Khorshed told stories about her life, and and in 1997, she asked me to write a book about her stories, to take those stories, to compile them, and to put them into a book. And I said yes. It was. I came to, the first time I went to Mehrabad was in 1994, and so part of that trip was the 25th Amar Tizi, and but a Baba lover, Tony Griss, perhaps some of you know Infinite Griss. He said to me, you know, he took me under his wing. That was my first trip, and he said, "Oh, there's this mandali member. You need to meet her." I said, "Oh, okay." And so he ushered me into the trust office, and he took me into the room, into where Sudam and Asha stayed, and where Khorshed stayed, because she stayed in those 2 rooms in the trust compound with Asha, Sudam, and the two daughters. And so I walked in, and I went over to the room where Khorshed was, and I don't know if you know this, but Khorshed was like 4'10", 4'11", and so she was sitting there on the bed, and I walked in and greeted her, was very nice, and she asked me to sit down, and I did, and when I looked at her, what I saw was a halo around her head. So it was a thin gold band, and it was kind of burning there. You know how a flame affects the air? So did this, at least in my perception. And it was my first trip to India. It just, that's what I saw, and it didn't seem weird. It just seemed like the most natural thing. This is who this person is, and it was a very special visit. She gave me, she told me a story about how she knows Baba likes flowers, and gave me some prasad, and that was it. But what happened after that is I would go back and I would listen to her stories. I would tape record them. I'd video them. And so we had access to those stories. We had translations of her journal that she kept. It was in Gujarati. We had that translated. We had information from the archives. The Sufis gave us some material. So we had a lot of access to original material. And so when I say the book wasn't written, it was really taking her stories and transcribing them, and then putting them in a timeline and editing them. And we had the help of some wonderful people, very talented people. Judy Robertson, who lives in Seattle, very talented editor. She did historical research and also helped write the book. Steve Klein, who, fabulous. I hear he was artist in residence recently. He helped us streamline the stories. And Fair McCaig did a lot of the original editing. Just a talent, this woman. So we had some very, very talented people and the help of a number of people with translations and things like that. So it was a community effort and a great boon to all of us who worked on it. I would like to actually start out the talk with the story that Khorshed first told me, which is how she knew that Baba liked flowers. And then I'll move on to other stories. And if people have questions, I'd like to entertain those as well. But let me go with this story first, if you don't mind. So it was about 1927, and so I want you to picture Mehrabad in 1927, very barren, right? And the post office was there, but the women, Mara, Naja, Daulat Mai, they were staying in the bathing rooms, which is, do you know where Ted and Janet used to stay? That building that's right near the original Mandali Hall? Well, the girls were staying in that building, and there was their tata matting around it, so they were rather secluded. The Prem Ashram was up on the top of Mehrabad Hill, and also the Babajan school was going on. So there's a lot of activity in Mehrabad, but the women were secluded. Their daily activities were cooking for everybody, so that was no small task, right? Making a big vat of rice, and then they had to make 1,000 chapatis every day in front of a fire. In the middle of the summer, there was a little roof over the place that they did it, and they had to be in full saris, right? Because that's what Baba wanted. And it was really hot. Their joy every day was when Baba would come and have lunch with them. And he would visit and he would interact with them, and that was their joy. Well, around this time, Baba decided to be in seclusion they had dug out the crypt the Samadhi, right? That's where the Samadhi is now. So they dug a hole there, and Baba was keeping seclusion there. And this was a special time also for Khorshed because her parents were also there at Mehrabad. Her dad was separated from her and Suna when they would visit Baba most of the time because Kaikushru, which is the name of Khorshed's dad, the father wouldn't allow the father's family, they didn't like Baba at all. So they wouldn't let Kaikushru come to see Baba very much at all. So this was a special time for Khorshed because her parents were there and they were staying in a bamboo tata. They'd use that fencing to create a little place where they could stay, basically, right next to where Khorshed was in the compound with Mara and others. So Baba's secluded on the hill, and her parents are there. They're doing all the cooking, and Baba starts not coming to see them each day. And they're wondering what's happening. Of course, they hear that Baba's in seclusion. And this goes on, the seclusion goes on for days. It stretches into weeks, starting to be months. And they're feeling very bad because seeing Baba each day is what really that's why they're there, is to see Baba and to be with him, right? And to serve him, but they weren't able to do so because he was up in seclusion. But the only person who can go and see Baba when he's in seclusion turns out to be Khorshed's dad. He would visit Baba and take his darshan in the morning at 7 a.m. and in the evening at 7 p.m. And that was the only person that was allowed to see Baba and take his darshan. So of course Baba was fasting and everything during that time. So the women are feeling bad, and Khorshed's kind of really getting a bit antsy. You know, she's thinking, what to do? Baba's going to forget us, what to do? What can we do? So she's thinking and thinking. And this is, like I said, Khorshed was the one who, in the ashram, who would come up with all of these ideas about how can we show Baba we're going to love him, that we love him. And so she comes up with this idea. She says to Mara, we have to do something. Well, what should we do? Well, let's make him a garland. Let's make him some flowers. But how to do that? They can't leave the compound. Okay, so maybe they could have somebody go buy flowers because Vishnu would go to the market every day. Well, they didn't have any money. Okay, so what do we do? So You guys probably know of a woman named Valu, right? Who was Mani. Sometimes she's referred to as a servant, but Mani said no, she wasn't a servant. She was one of us. She was actually a woman who lived in Erengaon village, and she would come and help with the duties and help with cleaning things for the women. So they came up with this idea: let's ask Valu to bring us flowers. And Khorshed knew of a stream bed a ways away that had these oleander flowers. So they sent Valu, it was like a mile away. So they sent Valu to go get the flowers. And Valu comes back with a whole apron full of these flowers. And she brings the flowers in, and the women just go, oh my God, these flowers are so beautiful. What can we make with these? This is incredible. Let's make something really, really special. So they are pulling threads from the sari, from their old saris, right? Khorshed's old sari that she had for when she was did her kusti ceremony. They pull the threads and they start making. They made a garland. Beautiful long garland. They made a crown for Baba out of the flowers, wristlets and ankle cuffs out of the flowers. And they worked late into the night, like 2 a.m., right? They're trying to thread the needles and do this by kerosene lamp, right? And they're loving every minute of it because they're thinking about doing it for Baba with all their love and how he'll like them and enjoy them and that kind of thing. So they stay up really late. And the next morning, okay, how do we get the flowers to Baba? Can't leave the compound. Nobody can see him. He's in seclusion. What do? My father can take them up to Baba. So Khorshed, so they come up with this idea, and Khorshed thinks to herself, if we give the flowers to Baba just outright, he may feel like, he may not like it. They're concerned he may not like it. But Khorshed thinks to herself, but I know Baba's nature. He's very curious. So she comes up with the idea that what we'll do is we'll put the flowers into a little basket and we'll cover them with a cloth. And she goes to her father and she says, now, when you go up to the hill, please take this basket. Don't give it to Baba. Put it in his line of vision so that when you go and take his darshan, he can see it. But don't tell him what it is and just leave it there. And so Khorshed knows he's going to ask about it, right? So Kaikushu says, he doesn't know what's going on. He said, okay, okay, I'll do that. So he carries the basket up, and just as Khorshed instructed, he puts it down, and then he walks up to the samadhi. He takes his darshan from Baba, and then he starts walking away. And then he hears Baba clap, right? and he turns around and says, and Baba says, what is that? And Kaikushu says, I don't know. The girls just gave it to me. I don't know what it is. Bring it here. And so Kaikushu brings it and gives it to Baba, and Baba opens it, and he gets this great big smile on his face. And he looks at the flowers and he just admires them. And he puts the garland on. And then he puts the wristlets on. And then the crown. And the anklets. Where did this come from? How did these girls get the flower? Where did these flowers come from? How did they make them? Where did and everything? He's asking all these questions, and Kaikushu says, Baba, I don't know. Well, go find out. And so Kaikushu says yes, and he walks down the hill, and the girls are like waiting, And so they're waiting to say, what happened? What did he say? And he says, wait, give me a minute. Baba wants to know everything. He is so pleased with you, with the flowers. He's so touched. It just meant a lot to him. So I need to find out, how did you do this? Tell me all the details. Tell me what you did, how you did it, when did you do it, all of the details. So the girls tell him the whole story. And Kaikushu, when he goes up in the evening, he takes that message to him. And Baba is delighted with everything until Kaikushu tells him that they stayed up till 2 a.m. And then Baba gets very concerned and says, no, you tell them they cannot stay up that late. It's not good for them. They'll be bad for their health. 11 o'clock, maybe midnight the latest, but not 2 a.m. You got to tell them. And what was beautiful is that, and so Kaikushu came back. The women were, of course, delighted to have all of that concern. And at that point, they started. Kaikushu would take messages from the women up to Baba every day, and Baba would respond. And that helped them make it through the seclusion. And that was the first story Khorshed told me when I first met her. So one day, a Muslim friend came up to Kaikushu and said to him, Kaikushu, what's going on? You always look so sad. And usually Kaikushu, he's not a weak person. This was a very strong, this was quite a soul, her father. And he usually would not say anything. He wouldn't complain. But he did this one day. He actually let the fellow know what was going on, and he just said he wanted spirituality, but he had all these family responsibilities he couldn't take care of. And by the way, Kaikushu, the way he wanted to, they had a toddy shop, the family had a toddy shop, but Kaikushu was always playing the horses. It was his investment strategy, right? It's not a game, it's an investment strategy. I mean, he was trying to, because he thought if he won the horse races, he'd be able to support everybody, right? So this was his big dream. But the Muslim fellow said, if you want spirituality, you want money, I have a way. And it's not a very easy way. It's actually quite difficult. He said, what you do is you sit in a circle for 40 days without eating, without sleeping. You can have milk, you can have water, and you have to say some prayers that I'll tell you, but 40 days and 40 nights. It's a very hard way. Wild animals will come and assail you. You'll have apparitions, you'll have lots of things harassing you. But if you stay for the 40 days, you'll get whatever you want. And Kaikushu said, yes, I will do it. And so he went home that very day. He told his wife, I'm going to go and sit in a circle for 40 days. Don't disturb me. And so he drew a circle and he sat in the circle. He started sitting there. And it was true. He had all of these visions, and they were horrible visions, and lots of things coming to attack him, and snakes, and all of this stuff that he perceived. I don't know if they were there or not. And Khorshed, the way Khorshed would tell the story, says, and he made it 38 days. And then he took a little nap. He had a little nap. And when he had the nap, he had a vision. And what was that vision? Well, he had this vision of Lakshmi Devi, the goddess of wealth, coming to him. And she had something in her hand. What was it? Well, it was a baby. And she comes up to Kaikushu and she offers the baby to him. And Kaikushu says, no, I don't want a baby. She says, well, what do you want? He says, I want money so I can support my family. I want spirituality. I want to visit the masters. I don't want a baby. She says, he says, I want to win the lottery. I don't want a baby. She says to him, this is the lottery. Everything you want, you will get through this child. So I'm offering you the baby. And now Kaikushu doesn't know what to do. He doesn't want a baby. This clearly wasn't what he signed up for. And so the question is, but he doesn't want to refuse the goddess. And so he decides to take the baby. And so he reaches out to accept the baby, and as he does, his hands from his fingertips to his elbows turn to silver.
Ooh. Nice.
And the goddess gives him the baby, and when he looks at the baby, she's so beautiful. Now I'm telling the story the way Khorshed told it, right? She's so beautiful, she's so active, she's so lively. And he's just enchanted by her beauty. And he asks the goddess, well, what is her name? And the goddess says, Khorshed Banu. And so he accepts the baby, and the goddess says to him, now you take care of her in every way, give her every comfort, do not get cross with her, do not get angry, treat her very well, and everything you want, you will get through her. And then the vision is done. So he wakes up from his nap, and he thinks to himself, oh God, what did I do? I took a baby? He couldn't believe it. And he was incredibly disappointed. He'd spent 38 days in the circle, and he got a vision with a baby. So at that point, he decides to get out of the house, to leave the house, and to walk down the road. So he starts walking down the road, and on the road, there's this man coming the other way to him. And as he's passing the man on the road, the man turns to him and says, would you like to be my partner? Meant something different then. And he says, and the man continues, he says, I have a jewelry shop in the Fort District of Bombay. That's like the central business district of Bombay. He says, I have a jewelry shop. 11 boys manage the counters, but I need a partner to help me manage the shop. Would you like to be my partner? And Kaikushu says, yes, I'll do that. And it was from that moment that the family's fortunes changed. Jewelry shop, being part of a big jewelry shop like that is a good business. And the family started making a lot of money. And it turned out that Kaikushu was a very talented designer of jewelry. So his designs were very much in demand. The family was making money. All of his family obligations were taken care of. So Kaikushu started visiting the masters. He visited all of the perfect masters, every one. And Sai Baba was in particular. And after Sai Baba, he visited Upasni Maharaj, and once he started visiting Upasni Maharaj, he stayed with Upasni. He didn't go further. And so the family was taken care of. Kaikushu was visiting the masters, and Upasni in particular. And so in due course, a baby was born. And that baby, they had a daughter, and Kaikushu had actually forgotten the vision. And so they took the baby to a Zoroastrian priest to do the horoscope and everything. And of course they ask, what should the baby's name be? And the priest said, Khorshed Banu.
Wow.
And at that point, Kaikushu said, this is the one. Now they had another baby. They had had a son beforehand. His name was Erich. He died of a childhood disease. They had a baby afterwards. That baby also died of a disease. But Khorshed was the one. And so Khorshed became this much beloved child of her parents, Sunamasi and Kaikushu Masa. And the reason I take this long walk is so that you understand a little bit more about Khorshed. But what happened was Kaikhosru would go to Upasni Maharaj, and Khorshed would go sometimes with them. And at that time, Sakori was not like it is today. It was a barren field, and they would stay out under a tree through the night. And the villagers they'd get water from the villagers, sometimes a little bit of food from the villagers, and they would visit Upasni. But Khorshed started from a very early age having an association with Upasni, and she had this deep spiritual longing. And so she was very interested in Upasni, and around 1917, Kaikhosru came back from Sakori with this news of a Persian boy who was visiting Upasni, and Kaikhosru would tell Suna about this boy, Merwan, who was so beautiful, and obviously a special disciple to Upasni, because they would spend a lot of time together under the tree talking. And when Khorshed heard about this Persian boy, her ears would always perk up, and she had a longing to meet this Persian boy, Merwan, who Maharaj loved so much and was so important to Maharaj. And the thing I also would like to share is that Kaikhosru was actually quite instrumental in bringing a lot of the early disciples of Baba's to Upasni. So Gulmai was Sunamasi's sister. And so, and Pilamai was related, and so there's a whole bunch of family relations that would come to Sakori, first with Kaikhosru introducing them, and then of course on their own they would come because they were connected too. But that family was instrumental in bringing a lot of people. And so in 1922, Gulmai writes to Sunamasi and says, we have a real special opportunity. Merwan wants to celebrate Upasni Maharaj's birthday in a grand style. And we need to bring firecrackers and prasad and little lanterns to light everything, and a whole bunch of things. And they had a whole list of party supplies and decorations. And Kaikhosru, of course, is very well off at this point, and so he's delighted to help out and to pay for all of this stuff. So on May 9th, they show up on the train station well, actually they'd come a couple days before, but they're on the train station, at the train station in Ahmednagar with Gulmai, waiting for a train to meet Merwan and his disciples, because there had been some early mandali coming to be with Baba at that point. And they were meeting them to go to Sakori to celebrate Upasni Maharaj's birthday in a grand style. Now, you probably can sense from some of the stories I've told you that Khorshed was not all that good at waiting, especially when seeing Baba was on the line, right? She was ready to meet him yesterday. She was so anxious to see him. She kept asking Gulmai, when is the train coming? When can we see him? When can we get on the train? When is this all going to happen? And so she's very excited, because this is the day. This is the day she's going to meet Merwan, who she's heard about for 5 years and wanted to meet him all that time. This is the day.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
How old she is then?
12. Khorshed was born May 2nd, 1910. And so she had just turned 12. And so the train pulls up, right? So the train arrives, and Khorshed's ready to get on. So she makes a beeline for the door. There's this woman sitting in the doorway. So she steps over the woman briskly and says, "Where's Merwan?" And the woman points, she says, "Over there." Turns out this woman that she stepped over was Baba's mother. Oh no, yeah. So she's getting in, and Baba had rented a train car all himself for everybody, a reserved train car, and she's making her way to the train car, and then she sees him, and she says, her heart, oh my God, he's so beautiful. Everything my father said, it doesn't even compare to his beauty. She said, I felt such a satisfaction in my heart. Like I found a treasure that I had lost. I didn't, and had finally found. All these years of my life have been wasted. She's 12. All these years of my life have been wasted until seeing him. She says, I fell in love with Merwan in that moment. And so she's standing there, and Baba comes up to her and says, who are you? And I'm Adi's cousin, because she's Adi's cousin, right? And he says, what's your name? Khorshed. Oh, hi, Khorshed, come on in and sit down. Because Baba was talking at that point, right? So come and sit down. So she goes and sits down, and she is watching Baba the whole train visit. The whole train trip. And at each stop, Baba would get down and he'd play ball with the mandali, and Khorshed was just watching him and just feeling in her heart all her love for him. And they made their way to Sikori on the train. It was a rather slow train. They got there just at dark, and Sikori was a bit of a ways from the train station, so they had to get some tongas, and that was a trick to get some tongas. They hired 3 tongas, one for Baba's mother, Shirin Mai, one for Gul Mai, and one for Khorshed and her mother. And so they walked to Sikori. The tongas came, and by the time they got to Sikori, it was quite late, and so they had to settle down in Sikori, and they were led into this long room, kind of like this one, this long room, dirt floor, unlike this one, dirt floor, and you have to understand, Khorshed knew practically everybody there, right? Because it was a lot of her relatives and family friends, right? Sarosh is a cousin, Adi K is a cousin, right? Many of those close disciples she was related to in one form or another through the Parsi community. And anyway, they're led into this long room, and they bed down, and Baba's bedroll is put right in front of the door, with Gustaji on one side, Adi Senior on the other side, and they're all bedding down for the night. And Sarosh says to Baba, oh, Merwan, because they called him Merwan at that time, Khorshed sings very well. And Baba says, Khorshed, come along and sing a song. And Khorshed felt really shy. She was 12 years old. It had been a big day. It had been a very big day meeting the avatar, right? So she didn't know what to do. She kind of just put her head on her pillow and turned over and went to sleep. And that's all she remembered of that. Now, I don't know about you folks. Many of you have much more contact with the mandali than I had, but with the mandali that I did meet, one of the things that I found to be a characteristic of them that has always amazed me is that even though they gave their lives in service to the avatar, they remembered that one little thing they didn't do for Baba years ago, and they regretted it. Khorshed was 87, and she's remembering this one thing she didn't do for him. And I always found that to be so amazing, right? So this was a big celebration. This was a big celebration, and they spent a couple of days decorating. Oh, I want to tell you a little bit, because the next morning, so I'm kind of switching here a little bit, going back to, they woke up, this is the next morning, and Khorshed wakes up, and she comes out of the room, and there Baba is playing a drum, and Adi is singing. And she's looking at this scene and remembering it, and who comes by but Upasni Maharaj comes out of his hut and wants to join them. And so Upasni comes in, and he doesn't have an instrument, he has a gunny sack. But he starts playing the air sitar to join in. And he's doing tricks with the sitar and everything, and Khorshed's just delighting in this whole beautiful scene. It was kind of like a family, right? This close, intimate contact with Merwan and Upasni, both of whom she loved deeply. It's a very, very special time. And so the time goes on, and like I said, it's a 4-day event where they're putting up the decorations. They're making Sakori look very, very beautiful with the lanterns, the gas lanterns that they turn on at night, and the garlands and the party favors and everything. And then the day before Upasni Maharaj's birthday, Upasni says to Suna, Gulmai, and Shirinmai, he asked them all to make some bhajia, so fried chickpea patties. And he instructs them on a special way to make these patties. He wants them to add neem leaves into the batter. Now, nobody does that when they're cooking, because neem leaves are very bitter. They're good for health, but they're quite bitter for the taste. So you'll make medicine out of them, but nobody adds them into food, because that would make it taste bad. But that's what he wanted. And he gave them instructions on how to bathe beforehand and how to make the patties. So they get up very early in the morning, like 3 a.m. or something like that, and they start making the patties for the prasad. And they make 3 baskets, and these are set aside by Maharaj's hut. This is the day of the birthday, and so they have an early morning arti, like at 4 a.m., and then they have a little parade around the town. They take Maharaj's picture around in a palanquin, on something that they're carrying, and they have a parade around the town, and then Maharaj calls them all back to his hut, because he has a special announcement that he wants to make. And so everybody is gathered in the hut, and they're all waiting for Maharaj to start speaking, and Khorshed, of course, is looking around and saying, "Where's Merwan?" Because he wasn't there. Where's Merwan? So she's wondering in her mind, where's Merwan? And Merwan comes in from the other door. And he has a beautiful stride, a graceful stride, as you can imagine, in a sadra he's walking. And he comes in, and he folds his hand to Maharaj and bows down in front of him. And Khorshed says, "Oh, what a humble disciple he is. Truly, Maharaj has picked the right one to be his primary disciple." And so Maharaj says, "I have some important things to tell all of you. I want you to listen very carefully. Merwan is the avatar. I have given all that I have, all my spiritual power to him. From now on, you should not come to me. You should all go to him. Merwan will make the whole world dance on his finger. So you should go to him, hold on to his daman with both hands, not just one hand because it might slip. Hold on to his daman with both hands. later on I may say something completely different, that Meherwan is not spiritual, that I haven't given him everything. You should not believe that. You should believe what I am telling you now, that Meherwan is the avatar, and you should all go to him and stay with him. And this was big, right? This was big news. And so then Maharaj, after he tells everyone that, he passes out the prasad. So he gives the chickpea patties to everyone with the neem leaves. And he says, okay, now I want you all to eat the prasad. And so everybody eats it. And Maharaj asks, how does it taste? And everyone says, oh, it's delicious, Maharaj. It's very delicious. You don't taste any bitterness? No. Well, did you know that? He says, well, there were neem leaves in it. And everybody was very much surprised. Really? And he says, yes. And you didn't taste any bitterness? No, Maharaj. That's because I gave it to you. Now I want you all to remember what I said about Meherwan. And now it's time for everyone to, and there was a pause, and then now it's time for everyone to leave. So everyone starts getting up and getting ready to leave, and they say goodbye to Maharaj and take the final darshan, and they're also saying goodbye to Meherwan and taking his darshan. And so everybody's embracing Meherwan, and the bullock carts are there waiting to take them to the train station. And as Sunamasi, Khorshed's mother, is embracing Meherwan and taking darshan, Meherwan holds onto her hand and says, would you like to live with me? Suna says, what? This is quite a surprise to her. Would you like to stay with me in the ashram? Well, yes, willingly. Yes, I would. And Meherwan, of course, has this habit of asking the same question 2 or 3 times, 3 times or multiple times. And so Meherwan asks it again, and Suna says, yes, I'd love to stay with you, but where will we stay? You're moving here and there all the time. Where would we stay? Meherwan says, not now, but later. Would you like to come and stay with me? And she says, yes, very much. And so Meherwan embraces her, and she goes to the bullock cart, and Khorshed is the next one in line to embrace her. And she's like, wow, staying with Meherwan? I hope he asks me to stay with him too. And she embraces Meherwan, and he says, do well in school. And she's heartbroken. Do well in school. And she starts, so she was walking back to the bullock cart, and so she embraces him and starts walking back to the bullock cart, and she starts to cry. Because she's thinking, well, my mother's going to, Meherwan asked his mother to stay with her mother to stay with him, and not me. And Gulmai is right there and notices that Khorshed's crying, and she says, what are you crying for? She says, Meherwan asked my mother to stay with him and not me. And Gulmai says, so when your mother goes, you can go also. So why cry? Don't. Well, that cheered her up. So she was okay then. And so she gets on the bullock cart, and then they go. So that's how Khorshed met Baba. Yes, sir?
Could you share with us how Meher Baba came into your life?
Into my life? I'll tell you what, how about if we have some time, I'll be happy to share that. But let's, if you don't mind, I'd love to make this about Khorshed. And so the reading was about loving Baba and serving him. And I want you to know that there were after that, Baba went to Pune for a little bit of time, and then he went to Bombay and opened up Mandali Meme, right, with the disciples, with his early disciples. And like I said, Khorshed was related to many of them. It turns out that at that point, Khorshed and her family were living in Dadar. They were a 10-minute walk from Mandali Meme. And Khorshed's family had orders to visit Mandali Meme. Khorshed was ordered to come to visit Baba every day after school at 4 o'clock. Khorshed's father was ordered to come in the morning, 7 a.m. to say Arti, and in the evening, 7 a.m. to say Arti. And Suna was able to come and visit anytime she wanted. And so it was during the Mandali Meme time. Now, Khorshed was delighted to be able to go, and she went every day after school at 4 o'clock. And even at the age of 12, she was given strict orders not to talk to any of the men. Even though many of them were her relatives, she couldn't talk to any of them. The only person she could talk to in the ashram was Gustaji. And so when Baba was with all the men mandali, Khorshed would be hanging out in the room with Gustaji on the side of the darshan hall in Mandali Meme. And there are many, and Khorshed has many fun memories about the times that she was there in Mandali Meme. And in fact, and there's a number of stories about Khorshed around food. You guys all met Khorshed in the days when she really had an appreciation for food and loved to eat everything, right? So I'm guessing a number of you remember going out to have food with Khorshed, and she would love to have everything, even a little bit of beer every now and then. But in the early days, Khorshed wouldn't eat anything other than a hard-boiled egg. And you may know all of the mandali are quite strong personalities and individuals. And so when Khorshed said, "I'm not going to eat anything," she wasn't going to eat anything. So she lived in an extended family, and these aunties were all trying to pressurize her to eat stuff. And Khorshed would say, "No, I don't want to eat it." And then they say, "Well, if you don't eat it, we'll send you to bed early." Fine. So she'd go. "If you don't eat this great food, you're not even going to get your egg, and you're going to go to bed." Fine. So they had this tug of war for all the time going on about Khorshed and food. So the first day that Khorshed's there, she shows up at Mandali Meme at 4 o'clock, and around 6 o'clock, a bell rings on the veranda, and Khorshed's there with Gustaji, and Gustaji says to Khorshed, "Hey Khorshed, they're serving dinner out on the veranda. Here's a plate. Why don't you go have it?" Well, Khorshed, thinking, "I'm pretty sure they're not going to have boiled eggs." So she says to Gustaji that, "Well, I already had dinner." Some lame excuse like this. And so Gustaji said, "Fine." He puts the plate back, and they continue talking. Well, it got very quiet out on the veranda. And Khorshed, also, like Baba, has a very curious nature. So she wanted to know what was going on the veranda. So she opens the door and takes a look, and there's all these mandali lined up with plates in their hand, and who does she see serving the food? Well, it's Baba, serving the food with his own hand. And Khorshed says, "These people getting food by Baba's hand and not me?" She goes up to Gustaji, "Give me that plate." And she walks out on the veranda and gets in line. And as she gets closer to Baba, she's trying to take a look at, well, what's being served? And she sees, oh my God, it's cauliflower. Now she says, and so she said, Now, there were a lot of things that I didn't like at that time, but cauliflower was one of the things I didn't like the most. So she gets to the front of the line, and Baba takes an extra big scoop and dumps it on her plate, pile of cauliflower, and he says to her, "Now you eat all of that." And Khorshed walks away with this big pile of cauliflower, and she gives herself a pep talk, because that's how she used to do it in those days. She gave herself a little pep talk. She says, "Baba, this is by Baba's hand. I have to eat it." And so she eats the whole thing. And by the time she's done, she starts to like cauliflower. She surprised herself. She starts to like cauliflower. And every day she would go, and every day Baba was serving food, and so she would have another thing every day. So okra one day, spinach the next, and it would go on. And she found that she started liking everything. And all of these aunties, and by the way, they were kind of against Baba, this whole Baba thing, but all of these aunties are noticing Khorshed's eating. This is a miracle. I don't know about that Mayor Baba guy, but Baba guy, this is a miracle. So they're very much impressed. So it was a very close relationship at that time with her family, and Khorshed would go. She'd stay until 7 o'clock when her father would come, and Suna would come also. They'd have prayers, and that's when Khorshed would go. Now this is again hitting on the theme about how Khorshed loved Baba. Khorshed was very smart, very clever. She was not only talented in school, top of her class, but she was also a very talented musician, talented singer, talented harmonium player, and she started learning other instruments, the dilruba as well, right? The harp, the Indian harp. So she was a very talented musician. But as time went on, and she came into Baba's contact, she started losing interest in school. And in fact, she felt that why go to school? I want to be with Baba. So and it would be physically painful for her some days to be going to school. So sometimes she'd come up with excuses about being sick, and so she wouldn't go to school. Sometimes she felt so bad that instead of going to school, she'd go over to mandali Mim, and Baba would have her lie down in Gostaji's room and give her weak tea, because it would be her stomach and everything, and she would sometimes she'd throw up and everything, and so she would go to mandali Mim instead. But this deep longing to be with Baba, and that was all that mattered, was a theme. And in fact, it was during this time that Khorshed wrote a poem, and I'd like to read it to you, if you don't mind. And remember, Khorshed's 12, okay? And the poem is called Pul Pul Ma'awe, and it's translated into Comes Every Moment. Meher Baba's remembrance comes upon me every moment. Meher Baba's remembrance comes upon me every moment, comes upon me every second, every moment, comes upon me every moment. Meher Baba's remembrance. Enthusiasm leaps in my heart on taking his name. Enthusiasm leaps in my heart upon taking his name. I am offering my mind, my body, and wealth at your feet. Meher Baba's remembrance comes upon me every moment. This religious school of thought of Yezdan, of God, is great. Take his name continually and with attention. She wrote that when she was 12. And later on in the ashram, she read it to Mera, and Mera liked it very much. So this is the person we're talking about. And I'm going back to the theme about love and obedience. And as I mentioned to you, Khorshed took that first trip to Persia with Baba, and it was a long trip, and there were a lot of stops, and I'm not going to talk about those because she enjoyed it very much, and there were interesting mishaps. I will say that when they got to Karachi, she got to meet Katie and Goher, and she remembers them as tiny little girls with very cute cheeks. And she played with them, and Baba would spend time with the mandali talking about going into the jungle for 12 years, which Khorshed didn't like, but she was told she had to spend time, and because she wanted to be with him in the talk, but she was asked to go play. Anyway, on the way back, there came a point in the journey where Baba said to Gulmai and Khorshed and Suna that he wanted them to go to Ahmednagar, and he was going to continue, because these were the few women that were on the trip. I think Pilmai was also there, but they left her in Karachi, and then coming back was just Suna and Khorshed and Gulmai. And so she sends Khorshed, Suna, and Gulmai to Meher Nazar, the trust compound, and because Baba was going to take a very arduous trip with the men mandali by foot to continue the journey, and they were going to, and so he sends them back, and as Suna and Khorshed are leaving, Baba says to them, "Do not step foot out of Ahmednagar. Even if the sky falls, do not step foot out of Ahmednagar." So that's his order. Okay. So so they're in the trust compound, and they're staying there for a couple days, and a telegram comes from Bombay, and it's from the uncle, Kaikushu's uncle. I mean Kaikushu's brother, and it says, "Kaikushu is very ill. You must come to Bombay immediately." Now, I haven't told you guys a lot about the family, but the family was very much against Baba. You may have picked up, I didn't say it very explicitly, but you may have picked up that Kaikushu didn't go to the celebrating of Upasani Maharaj's birthday in a grand style. The family started inhibiting Kaikushu from going to see spiritual masters, and especially when Merwan came on the scene, they really tried to break that up, to not allow that. So Kaikushu, to fulfill his responsibilities and to appease the family, he stayed at home and let his wife and daughter go. And he did have stomach problems, that was true, but Suna looks at this telegram and thinks, this isn't true. And besides, they have the order from Baba not to go anywhere, right? Even if the sky falls. Okay, so she crumbles up the paper and she throws it away. The telegram, she throws it away. A couple days pass. A second telegram comes. "You must come soon. Kaikushu's condition is very bad. You must come to Bombay." And again, Suna feels, that maybe this is a ruse to get them to come back to Bombay. Anyway, she has her orders. And she talks about it with Khorshed, and they take the telegram, and they throw it away. The next day, another telegram comes, but it doesn't come to Suna. It comes to Khan Sahib, Gulmai's husband. Now, I don't know if you've seen any pictures of Khan Sahib. He is a big guy. He is a big guy. He's got a big mustache, and he had a temper. So, Khan Sahib gets this telegram, and he storms across the compound. And when this guy storms across, the clouds are above his head. He's storming across the compound, and he comes to Suna. He says, Did you see this? He didn't speak very quietly. Did you see this? What? This telegram. Kaikushu is very ill. Why are you still here? And it says that you received 2 telegrams already. Where are they? Did you receive them? Yes, I received them. And you're still here? Yes, I can't travel. What? Your husband is ill in Bombay and you can't travel? I'm not feeling well. What? So he is very angry and letting it be known, and he's kind of giving Suna the what for, and then he turns to Khorshed and says, "Well, what about you?" And Khorshed says, "I can't go without my mother." At this point, Khan Sahib is like, and Khorshed says, "Okay, and what are we to do? This is his house. We're guests in his house. He tells us to go, and my mother is standing there saying, 'No, we won't go.'" And this isn't the age of emancipated women. This is 1922 in India. So this is a big deal. This is someone standing their ground in front of a lot of anger, and this is something, right? Anyway, Suna stands her ground. Khorshed stands with her mother, and Khan Sahib and storms back across the compound. So it's, Anyway, a few days later, Baba shows up in Ahmednagar. He doesn't stay in the trust compound, but he's at a dharamsala, and a rest house, and he calls Suna and Khorshed to come and see him. And so, of course, they go. They're delighted to see Baba. They greet him. And then Baba says to them, in all seriousness, I understand you got some telegrams asking you to go to Bombay. Why didn't you go? And they really don't know what to say, because they're following Baba's order, right? They don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. And then Baba asks them again, why didn't you go? They're speechless. And why didn't you go? And then Suna says again, I wasn't feeling well. They don't want to embarrass Baba by saying, well, because you told us. So they don't want to embarrass him. And so, well, I wasn't feeling well. And Baba says, yes, but why didn't you go? I understand his condition is serious. Why didn't you go? And at that point, Khorshed can't take it anymore. She says, we didn't go because of your order. And Baba says, what? You told us, even if the sky falls, don't step foot out of Ahmednagar. It was because of your word that we didn't go. And Baba kind of gets a sly smile on his face. He said, really? Yes. Don't you remember? Yes, I remember. You mean my order meant that much to you, that you didn't go? Of course. What else are we to do but to remember your word? And at that point, Baba gets a big smile on his face. My word means that much to you? Of course. And he embraces them. And he says, I'm very happy with you that you followed my order. Now, go back to Bombay and get Kaikushu, bring him to Pune, and I will join you shortly. Had you left, Kaikushu would have died. But because you followed my order, he's going to be just fine. So go back and get him. And so that was one of the early big tests for Khorshed in obedience. And of course, you can't talk about Baba's orders with anyone, right? So they never said to Khan Sahib, well, we can't go because Baba told us. And even with Baba, they didn't say it, right? So that was that. So I told you about some of the creative things that Khorshed would come up with to show that they love, to help the ladies show that they love Baba. So one of my favorite stories is this one. It's a little bit of a walk, and somebody's going to show me 5 fingers when I need to stop, okay? So it's a little bit of a walk, so I hope you'll indulge me, because during the mandali meme times, I don't know if you knew this, but Bombay that we know and love today wasn't really Bombay as it is now. Back in the early 1900s, it was actually 7 islands, and the city had a project, the government had a project to fill in the land around that. It was actually swampland. And you asked me about a little bit about my early times with Baba. I mean, I was married in the late 80s to an Indian woman, and we went to Bombay to meet the family. And I remember walking out of the Bombay airport, and it smelled like a swamp. And so now I know why. Anyway, so it was a big swamp, and there was one Muslim Baba lover his name was Munshi Rahim, and in fact I believe he was the guy who gave Meher Baba the name Meher Baba, by the way. Anyway, he was a contractor, part of this work, and he had a house that was on Marine Drive, and what would happen is he would, of course, come to Mandali Meme to visit Baba, but sometimes he would have programs at his house where he would invite the community in, because Mandali Meme was quite restricted. But he would have these gatherings at his house, big lunches, for Muslims to come and meet Meher Baba. And so one day, Khorshed was there, and it must have been a Saturday because she was able to be there for lunch, or she had called in sick. But anyway, she accompanied Baba. And so she had to sit outside because there were a lot of men there. So she had to sit outside, and what she would do is it was a big room, and she would situate herself outside in front of the doorway so that she could see Baba and everything that he did, so she could watch him the whole time. And they would have a program, and they would serve a lunch, and after the lunch, they would bring a pitcher of water, and they would let Baba wash his hands from all the food particles, right? And what they would do is they would have a sheet underneath Baba's hands, and as Baba would wash his hands and the food particles would fall from his hands, they would be caught by the sheet. And then the clever people who had the sheet, they would take it outside, and then they would eat the food particles and take it as prasad. And Khorshed was very impressed. This is the gal who saved the lice, right? So Khorshed got this. She says, oh, these Muslim Baba lovers, they love Baba 100%. This is very, very impressive. She was very much impressed, and she thought about that, and she held it in her mind. Now, years later, so years have gone by. It's like 1927. They're in Mehrabad, and Baba's coming for lunch every day, and after the lunch, Baba would wash his hands, and they'd give him soap, and he'd wash his hands. They'd collect the water the soapy water in a bowl, and then they'd throw it out. And one day, Khorshed says to them, you know, we're not loving Baba 100%. Well, Mera, Gulmai, Dolatmai, Naja, what? We're not loving Baba 100%? What, Khorshed, what do you mean? Oh no, we're not loving Baba 100%. Those Muslim lovers in Bombay, they were loving Baba 100%. Khorshed, what do you mean? Now, Khorshed was the youngest one of all these people, and they're sitting there listening to Khorshed. What do you mean, Khorshed? And she says, well, when Baba washes his hands with the hand washing water, we just throw it out. Like we don't care at all. You know, we just throw it out we're not showing that we love Baba 100%. And they all turn to Khorshed. Khorshed, what do you think we should do? And Khorshed says, well, what we could do is we could actually drink this water instead of throwing it out. And everybody's like, yeah, that's a good idea. And so Baba comes in. From then on, they're washing his hands. They collect the water. Baba goes back up the hill, and they divvy up the water in these little special cups, and they drink, and they all drink it. And Khorshed said, and we felt so nice and good that we were loving Baba 100%. And so, and they're doing this for like a month, right? They keep doing this, and they're feeling really good about it. Now, one day, Baba, so they do the thing, they wash his hands, and he leaves, and he goes up the hill, and they divvy up the water, and they're about ready to drink, and Baba walks back in, and they look at Baba, he looks at them, they look at Baba, and he says to them, what are you doing? and Khorshed's going, uh-oh. You know. And Mara says, oh, Baba, we are showing that we love you 100%. He says, what? We're drinking this hand-washing water. We're not throwing it out. We're drinking this because we want to show that we love you 100%. And Khorshed's like, oh, busted. You know. And so Baba says, Baba doesn't say anything for a moment. And Khorshed says, I think he was laughing inside. And Baba then says, well, I know that you love me 100%. Well, actually, he asks, really? You've been doing this for how long? Oh, about a month, Baba. Really? And has anybody gotten sick? No, Baba, we haven't gotten sick at all. No, nobody's gotten sick at all. No throwing up, no anything. We've just felt really good and nice because we're loving you 100%. So he says, well, you don't do this anymore. I know that you love me 100%. You know, but what should we do with the hand washing water? Well, instead of just throwing it out, why not use it to water the flowers? Oh, yes, we'll be happy to do that. He said that will be showing that you're loving me 100%. And they're very happy. The girls are very happy, and Baba's very happy, and Khorshed's very happy that she didn't get in trouble for this idea. And that's how it was. So, does anybody have any questions?
What was your first time with Khorshed?
I told the story about that, Will. And I told the story about Khorshed knowing that Baba likes flowers. That was that. Yes, Andy.
What was it like in the new life for her?
What was it like?
What was it like in the new life for her, not being with Baba?
Yeah. Do I have time, or do you want? Okay. So, as you know, or as you may know, Khorshed was not selected to go on the new life. Everybody thought she would be one of the women because she was one of the first women to come to Baba, the first of that generation to come to Baba. And so everyone thought that she would be part of the new life. But Khorshed somehow had an intuition that she wasn't going to be selected. And this was devastating. This was really hard. She had this intuition. And you know, there was a lot of activity on Mehrabad Hill with Baba dispensing of all the property and all the belongings and everything. And so the ashram was being taken apart. by Baba. And there were those who expected to go on, who knew they were going to go. You know, Erich and others knew they were going to go. Mara knew she was going to go, and there were those who didn't expect to go. You know, some of the older women and older men, they didn't expect that they were going to go, but there were those in between. And Khorshed, everybody expected Khorshed to go, but she somehow had a feeling in her gut that she wasn't going to go, and this was really hard on her. And so Baba would have meetings. He had this one big meeting in the East Room, and of the water tank, right, and where he asked the question, so who's willing to obey me? Right? He's giving a talk about those those sayings about when the greatest thing is to obey the word of the master implicitly, even if you slit your throat in love. It's that's for love of the master. That's the greatest thing. And so he's giving a talk about all of this, and then he asks, after he gives that kind of a talk to all these very close disciples, he asks, who's willing to obey me? And of course, after such an inspiring speech, everybody's like, yes, I'll obey you. And all the women are raising, that are in the ashram, are raising their hand, except Khorshed. Khorshed did not raise her hand. And so Baba notices, everybody notices, of course. And so Baba gives a talk about how important it is to obey the master, and that even if you're not with him on the new life, physically you'll be with him on the new life, and this. And he again asks, who will follow me and obey me? And again, Khorshed does not raise her hand. And he says, everybody who will obey me, come and give me. Come and kiss my hand. Khorshed did not go. And so Baba keeps talking, and Khorshed is thinking. She says that she was thinking. She knows that she's eventually going to obey him, but she wanted to register with Baba how unhappy she was, because she knew what was going to happen. So he keeps talking, and eventually she says, she raises her hand, and that she'll obey. And so she comes, and instead of kissing his hand, she gives him a full embrace. And then she was assigned to live in Bombay, away from Baba, at Meherji's house, and it was hard. I saw a video where one of the mandali said, the new life was hard, but we had Baba. The people who lived the new life, and weren't able to be with Baba, those were the ones who had it really hard. Might have been Erich or Goher. I saw this in a video talking about it. And this was true. It was a really, really hard time. And I noticed that I'm out of time, so I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.